are you guys doing today? I'm so glad you could join me in yet another segment here on Wisdom Window. So in our last lesson, we learned about something called standard units. We learned about customary and metric. And in knowing those, we can determine whether we are measuring something that is larger or if something is smaller. And you're going to use different units depending on the size of your object, right? And then, so just to review, our customary units of length involve an inch, a foot, a yard, a mile. And then when we find area, we're going to label our answer with the unit of square inch, square foot, square yard, and square mile. And what that square indicates is that we're multiplying. So remember, with area, we use a formula that multiplies the length and the width. And then for metric units of length, this is something that we found to be used in areas of like Europe, but it's actually used around the world as well. And then the units for these are centimeter, meter, and kilometer. And then once again, when we answer an area problem by multiplying the length and width, we're going to use that unit to label our answer as a square unit. So a square centimeter, square meter, square kilometer. And that once again tells us that we multiplied the length and the width. So since we're reviewing some vocabulary from the last few lessons, I think it'd be really important as mathematicians to review it so that way we understand and can use this prior knowledge to help us in our lessons today. Alright, so our vocabulary, we've learned area, and that is the measure of space within a shape. So we're not looking at that fence anymore. That's our perimeter, is that fence. Our area is that entire area on the inside, like that grid area. And then a square unit is the single measurement of unit within a shape. So if we have a length of 4 units, we're going to have a measurement of one side of 4 of something. It could be inches, foot, yard, but it depends on that size of the shape. But 4 square units, right? And then we have the customary units, which we just reviewed, which is our units of inch, foot, yard, and mile, and then our metric units, which is our centimeter, meter, and kilometer. Once again, we use the customary units within the United States. And then in the metric units of length, this is something that's found in like Europe and around the world. And now I've noticed that there's been some confusion around the different types of formulas, whether we're adding or multiplying. So I'm going to review that really quick so it's really sharp in your brain. Ready? Let's go. So these are our 2 important formulas that we've been working with. We have the perimeter formula, and then we have the area formula. Remember, the perimeter is what we learned in our last unit. And that perimeter is the fence outline around a shape. So we're looking at that fence, very outline. And in perimeter, we add. So that's really important to remember, is that we add for perimeter. So I'm going to write that really quick. We add so that we don't forget. And then so our formula for perimeter, I write P to shorten perimeter, equals, and then we have the length plus the width plus the length plus the width. Or basically, that's basically for a squared item. If we have the perimeter of another type of shape, we could just say that it's we add up all the sides. So we have a side plus a side plus a side, okay? So perimeter, we're adding up all the sides of the fence. And now for area, that's a little different. In area, remember, we're going to multiply the length times the width. So our strategy is going to be multiplying. Okay, we multiply for area. So A, or area, is the length times the width. So we're multiplying the length times the width. Perimeter, we're adding the side plus the side plus the side plus the side. Okay, so now since we know this, I'm going to have us solve these 2 using those formulas so we can get that ingrained in our brain. So for this square, we have a length of 4 and a width of 4. So since it's a square, we know that every side is going to be the same, right? So we have 4 inches and 4 inches. So now for perimeter, or P, we would just add up all the sides. So we have 4. If you have a hard time keeping track of the numbers that you are adding, you can simply write them in the equation and cross them out. So we have 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4. So now we have our equation and we're ready to solve. So the one thing I like to do is break down a problem, especially when it's long like this. So I'm going to go to my first 2 numbers and I'm going to add those together. So we have 4 plus 4. 4 plus 4 is 8. And I'm going to add this other 2 numbers. So we have 4 plus 4 again, and we know that that is 8. And now I'm just going to add these 2 numbers together. You can add it however you would like. This is just a strategy that I like to use. And so then 8 plus 8 is 16. And so then our perimeter is 16. And we add inches, so we would write inches. Notice how I did not write square inches. Okay, because we didn't multiply or we didn't find the area. We found the perimeter. So our perimeter equals 16 inches. Okay? All right, let's try area. So area, now we're going to multiply. So area is multiplying, remember. So we have a length of 4 and a width of 4. So area, or A, equals length of 4. I'm going to cross that out so I can keep track of it. And multiplying, see how I wrote the times sign symbol? Times 4 is our width. So now, instead of adding like I did a perimeter, I'm going to multiply, because that's how you find area. So I'm going to multiply, because that's how you find the area. So we have 4 times 4. And I know that 4 times 4 is 16. And I can do that by also adding up all of the squares inside this figure. Or I can use my tools of multiplying to solve, right? So now that I've found 16, remember when we write an answer for an area, we're going to write it in square units. So I would write A, or area, equals 16 square. And then I look at the units, inches, so I'm going to write inches. Alright, so now since we've had some time to review some of the confusion that we've had and some vocabulary to help us talk like mathematicians, I think it's really important that we take this next step and use this knowledge to help us with something new. In our workbook page, we are going to be working on 14-4 today, and that's going to help us learn about the area of squares and rectangles. So basically, we're just going to be continuing our practice in finding that area of squared or rectangular shapes. But in this segment, it is going to have us practice some ordinary shapes, and then it's going to have us practice some other shapes that might look a little confusing. And so we're going to learn some strategies on how to break those down. Alright, so let's try out some of those problems. Alright, so now I have my 14-4 practice page ready to go, and I have selected a couple different colored pens. Like I've said, you don't have to use different colored pens. You can use a pencil, you can use a pen, you can use any color that you'd like, but I just like to separate my work by using different colors. So today I'm going to practice numbers 1 and 3 just to give you an idea of how to solve for these problems. So remember, like I mentioned earlier today, is that when we find the area of a shape, we are going to find it using this formula. The length times the width. This is super important that we understand that we are multiplying when we find the area of a figure. So now I'm going to read the directions for numbers 1 and 3, and then I'm going to model how to solve number 1, and then I'm going to have us work together on number 3. So for number 1, it says find the area of each figure. So to find the area, I'm going to use the formula. We have area equals the length, remember we're reaching out for the length, of 5 times a width of 5. And now this time we don't have a grid to count the boxes inside, so we're going to have to use that memory that we have on multiplying. We can also do counting by 5s. That's another way that we can solve for this. And I'm going to actually model that. So we have 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. So 5 times 5 is 25. So I'm going to write the area equals 25. Now, if we remember our lesson last time, the standard units, we're going to look at the unit, which is inches, and now since we are finding the area, we're going to write that in square units. So our area equals 25 square inches. All right, great job. So now let's move on to another one. Let's see. So this one, number 3, is a grid. So there's a couple different ways that we're going to have to use our learn strategies to solve. So first of all, it is not labeled in length and width. So that's our first step. So first I'm going to find my length, and that's going to be 1, 2, 3, and 4. So my length equals 4. I'm just going to write that on the side for now. And then I'm going to find my width. Remember, we always count that box again. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we have a width of 6. So now we're going to use that formula of area to solve. So we have area, or A, equals the length of 4 times the width of 6. Okay, so we can do 2 different strategies. We can use our counting on strategy by labeling each box with a number, or we can use our knowledge of multiplication facts. And that's up to you. So I'm going to use count on. So I'm going to count each box. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, don't forget to count on, 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24. So by counting all the boxes inside the figure, we got an area of 24. Am I done though? Is there something else that I need to put? Exactly, we need to write our square units because we're measuring for area. So our answer would be area equals 24 square units. And I wrote units just because these boxes are not labeled, so I'm just going to write the unit. All right, and then so for problems 2 and 4, you're going to just practice using that formula just like we did in number 1. Make sure you're showing your work and remembering that we're writing square inches for our answer and that we're multiplying the length times the width. Super important. And then for number 5 and 6, it's going to have you look at this figure on the bottom. And it shows a width and a length for each of these, even though it might not seem like it. So even this shape right here is the same as this one up here. So it's going to have 6 feet as its width, right? Because that's how wide this part is. And then it has its length already labeled. Okay, so you're just going to solve for that, answering these problems, making sure that you show your work and use the formula appropriately. and then it's going to ask you a couple other questions and to explain your answer. Make sure you try to use complete sentences to explain your answer as well. That'll help us to know that you understand it, and it'll also give you really good practice in explaining and becoming that mathematician. All right, and now if we turn to our reteaching side, you might see a figure that looks like this in the problem above. So the thing about problems like these is it looks really difficult to find the exact length and the width, right? Yeah, because there's a whole bunch of different kinds of numbers going on. It's a little crazy. So what you can do to make this more simpler for yourself is to find where you might be able to draw a line and create two separate figures and find the length and the width, or the area of both. Okay, so let's just look at this figure for a moment. So it kind of looks like an L figure, right? We've got this long part here and a long part here. And now there's a couple different ways that we can split this figure. We can split it right here and have this be our rectangle and this one be kind of like a square, but it's basically another rectangle. Or we can split it this way and it can be like a box up top and then a rectangular on the bottom. So there's a couple different ways that you can do it. Either way is fine, but I'm going to just split it like the last one I just showed you. Just like this, okay? And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna measure each of the two figures to find the area for the entire shape. So we have, let's call this guy figure A. That just kind of helps me be a little bit more organized. And figure B, okay? And then on my sticky notes here, I'm going to write that and we're gonna solve for each problem individually. So we have figure A, and that's where the problem for figure A is gonna go. And then we have figure B, and that's where the problem for that one's going to go. So now we need to first look at figure A and figure out the length and the width for this shape, so that way we can find area. Remember, our formula is length multiplied by the width. So let's see, we have a length of 1, 2, 3, and 4. So our length is 4. And we're going to multiply by the width, and we're going to count that corner again because that counts as the entire side. So we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. Wow, it's a perfect square. So now we're going to just solve. So we have 4 times 4. 4 times 4 is 16. And then we have meters, but it's going to be squared meters, right? Square meters. And then we need to find figure B, and that's this big figure right here, this long rectangle. So now we need to find the length and then the width. So we have our area equals the length times the width. I think just writing down this formula each time helps me to remember what I'm solving for, what I'm looking for. So that way I can just plug it in when I find it. So let's see, I'm gonna find my length first. So I'm gonna count all the boxes or all the square units on this side. So I have 1, 2, 3, and 4. Oh, well that's kind of cool. You notice how they said that this whole side was going to be 8 meters? Do you notice how it's split evenly on 4 and 4? That's kind of cool. That's something to notice. So we have a length of 4. And we're going to multiply it by the width. And remember, we're going to not go off this number because that's not including all of these boxes, right? So we're going to need to count all of these, all along the width side. So we're going to count this unit square again because that helps us measure the whole side, and we count on. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Wow, that's pretty cool. Did you notice something else? Where else do you see this number 10? Yeah, I see it down here too. That's the whole length of the bottom side. So that's pretty neat. So let's see, our width is 10. So now our area equals 4 times 10. And 4 times 10 is 40, right? Because if we had 4 tens, we add 10 plus 10 plus 10 plus 10, and that equals 40. So now what we need to do is we need to find the area of this entire figure, not just the figures A and B alone. We're going to need to come up with the entire thing. We're going to call that thing figure A/B. Because that's the entire thing. We've got A and B combined. So now what we need to do is, since we multiplied, we just need to add these two figures. I forgot my square meters. So look at that. Super important that we put those down, just so we don't forget that we found that area. So now I'm going to add these two to find the total number of shapes, because we know that there are 16 shapes here and there are 40 here. So now we just need to add them. So we have 16 plus 40. All right. Now, what helps me is if I make this a vertical problem. I feel like that helps me solve a little bit more efficiently. So I'm going to put those vertically, and now I have 40 plus 16. So I know that 6 plus 0 is 6, and then 4 plus 1 is 5. So my area of the total figure is going to be 56 square meters. And you can write out meters as the entire word as well. Whatever works best for you. But that's how you would solve a problem like this. You're going to break it up into two different shapes that are more realistic to work with. So here we broke it up into a square and a rectangle. We found the area of both figure A and then the figure B, the two different parts of that shape. And then we took the area of both of the figures and added them together, because in figure A we found an area of 16, so that meant that there was 16 squares inside this figure. And then when we found the area for figure B, we noticed that there were 40 squares inside this box. So instead of multiplying again, because that's just going to make our square bigger, right? We're just going to add these two together. And then in doing so, we found our answer, which was 56 square meters. Alright, well I hope you had a lot of fun in this new segment and that you were able to learn something new about square units and measuring for area. If there was one thing that you could share with me about something that you learned today, what would that be? Feel free to tell me in the comments below or to tell me in our next Zoom. I would love to hear what you have learned so far. Alright, so I have an answer from your last trivia question, and then I have a new question for you to answer. So our last question was, how many months of the year have 31 days? And our answer for that one is 7. There are 7 months that have 31 days. Did you know that? That's pretty cool. All right, and then our new question for today is, what is the sum of all the even numbers between 1 and 9? What is the sum of all of the even numbers between 1 and 9? So you're going to count 2, 4, 6, all those numbers up and find your answer. All right, well, until then, I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you very, very soon. All right.